All right, welcome everyone. Today we're diving deep into Pakistan's big plan to become a digital nation.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating story, actually, how technology can completely reshape a country.
And we've got a really cool source for this one. We're looking at a speech, well, kind of like a speech in an article, by Pakistan's IT minister.
So we get that inside scoop straight from the source on how they're planning this whole digital transformation.
Exactly. And what's interesting is they're not just playing catch up here.
Right, they're aiming high. They want to become like a global leader in the digital world.
It's all laid out in this thing called the Digital Pakistan Act. So what's the big idea here? What are they promising for, the average person in Pakistan?
Well, the minister uses some pretty strong language. He talks about inclusive access to digital services for everyone.
Okay, that sounds good, but how are they actually going to pull that off?
Right, there's that. And he talks about expanding the digital economy.
Got it. So more jobs, more opportunities, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe the most ambitious goal, they're aiming for a paperless government.
Whoa, hold on. Paperless government.
Yeah.
Has anyone actually done that successfully?
I mean, there are some countries that have gotten pretty close, like Estonia, for example. They're pretty advanced with their digital stuff.
Right.
And Singapore, too. They've got these digital ID systems, e-governance platforms, all that jazz. It's all streamlined and transparent.
Okay, so those are like the models they're looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Pakistan can learn a lot from them.
But it's still a huge undertaking.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to take a ton of investment and a complete overhaul of how the government works now. Lots of bureaucracy to untangle.
And that's just the tech side of things. What about getting everyone on board, government officials, regular citizens? That's a whole other challenge.
Oh, yeah.
But let's go back to that inclusive access thing for a second. I mean, Pakistan has a lot of people living in rural areas. How do they plan to reach everyone, especially those who might not even have internet access yet?
That's the million-dollar question. The minister emphasizes connecting even the most remote areas. He talks about expanding broadband infrastructure.
Right, but broadband can be expensive to roll out, especially in those hard-to-reach places.
Exactly. So the details on how they'll actually reach everyone, especially given the costs involved, are a bit vague.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One idea they float is leveraging mobile technology. I mean, almost everyone in Pakistan has a cell phone.
Ah, so use what's already working well, but scale it up.
Right.
Smart. Okay, so we've got the why behind this whole digital nation push. Now let's get into the how. They've outlined 6 key dimensions for this digital future. Let's break those down one by one.
Okay, sounds good. Each dimension focuses on a different part of society. The first one is digital infrastructure.
Okay, so that's like the foundation. You got to have that first.
Exactly. Think high-speed internet, reliable mobile networks. It's the backbone of everything else.
Makes sense, the digital highway.
Exactly.
Then there's digital society. I'm picturing like doctors doing appointments online, kids in remote villages learning online.
Yeah, all that. Digital society is about using technology to improve people's lives. So yeah, online education, reaching remote areas, telehealth for healthcare access. They even talk about using tech to preserve Pakistan's cultural heritage, which is really cool.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great point. Now, this is where it gets interesting for me. Digital economy. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, they want to create a booming digital economy, right? Attract investment, help startups grow, and make Pakistan competitive globally.
So we could see Pakistani startups taking on the world. Maybe even a whole new wave of e-commerce businesses popping up.
Exactly. They're focusing on things like fintech, e-commerce, IT services,
Yeah.
sectors with high growth potential.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. Now, what about digital governance? Is that where the whole paperless government thing comes in?
That's it. It's about making the government more efficient, more transparent, and easier for people to access.
Less hassle, less paperwork.
Right. So think things like online voting, paying your taxes online, digital land records, basically interacting with the government without all the red tape.
Love it. Okay, then we've got digital skills and human capacity. I'm guessing this is about education, making sure people have the right skills for this new digital world.
Exactly. They recognize that technology is only as good as the people using it.
Right. You need a workforce that's ready to embrace all this new tech.
Exactly. So they're talking about investing in digital literacy programs, training people for the jobs of the future, fostering that culture of innovation.
Makes sense. And finally, there's digital innovation and entrepreneurship. So this is where the startup scene comes in, like incubators, venture capital, that sort of thing.
Exactly. They're aiming to create an environment where startups can thrive, encourage research and development. They even want to set up innovation hubs all over the country.
Wow, so 6 dimensions, each with a specific focus. It's clear they've really thought this through. But how are they going to actually make all of this happen? I mean, it's a huge undertaking.
It is. They need a solid plan. And that's where this thing called the National Digital Master Plan comes in, and this concept of digital public infrastructure, DPI.
Okay, break it down for me. What's the master plan and what is this DPI thing?
So the master plan, from what we can tell, it's like the roadmap, right? It sets the targets, outlines the strategies, figures out the resources. It's the blueprint for building this digital nation.
Got it, the grand plan.
Right. And DPI, it's like the foundation. Think of it like the operating system for a computer.
Okay, I like that analogy.
It includes things like digital identity systems, payment gateways, those data exchange platforms, basically the building blocks that make all those digital services we talked about possible.
So DPI is what everything else is built on. Is there anything special about Pakistan's approach to this? How does it compare to what other countries are doing?
Well, they're really emphasizing building a strong and secure DPI that can adapt as technology changes. They're talking about interoperability and open standards.
Hold on, back up a second. What does that mean exactly? Interoperability and open standards.
It means they're building a system that can easily connect with other systems, and they're using common standards that everyone can access. It's like avoiding getting locked into using one specific company's technology.
So it's about flexibility and future-proofing.
Exactly. And while they don't mention any specific platforms, they do talk about learning from the best in the world. So they might look at India's system for digital ID or Estonia's platform for data exchange.
So they're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They're looking at what works and adapting it to their needs.
Right.
Now, one thing I'm curious about is Pakistan going it alone on this? Or are they partnering with other countries?
Actually, they're part of some big global initiatives, like the UN's Global Digital Compact.
The Global Digital Compact. Remind me what that is again.
It's like an agreement signed by most countries, including Pakistan. It outlines a shared vision for a better digital future. It's about responsible use of tech, bridging the digital divide, tackling ethical questions.
Okay, right, I remember now. So they're part of this global movement.
Exactly. They're not just focused on their own digital transformation. They're thinking about the bigger picture.
And that's a smart move.
Yeah.
Right? It shows they're taking this seriously, and that attracts international partners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, speaking of global trends, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. Artificial intelligence. Everyone's talking about AI these days. What's Pakistan's plan for AI?
They're super optimistic about AI's potential in Pakistan.
Really?
Yeah, the IT minister specifically calls out AI as a key driver of economic growth. He sees it as a way to empower young people, solve local problems, and ultimately make Pakistan a global leader in AI.
So it's not just hype. They're really betting on AI.
Yeah.
But how are they actually going to make it happen? Are they developing their own AI tech, partnering with existing players, or both?
That's a good question. This speech doesn't give us a ton of specifics about the implementation plan, but they do emphasize building a strong AI ecosystem. So it'll probably be a mix of things: investing in research and development, attracting foreign investment, fostering collaboration between universities, companies, and the government.
And of course, they'll need to make sure they have enough people who know how to work with AI.
Absolutely. They'll need to ramp up their STEM education big time so people have those AI skills.
Okay, so lots of potential, but let's be realistic. AI isn't all sunshine and roses, right? What about the potential downsides? Job displacement, ethical concerns, bias in algorithms. These are all valid worries.
You're absolutely right. The speech focuses on the positive, but those concerns are real and they can't be ignored. They'll need to find that balance, fostering innovation, but also putting safeguards in place to minimize risks.
So is Pakistan equipped to handle all that? Do they have the rules, the ethical guidelines, all that stuff in place for responsible AI development?
That's the million-dollar question. The speech doesn't really delve into those specifics. But to make this work, they'll need to address those concerns head-on, gain the trust of their people and the international community. Otherwise, this whole AI push could backfire.
Absolutely. Okay, so they've got this grand vision, but they need people to make it happen, right? Who's actually in charge of this whole digital nation thing?
Well, according to the source, there's this thing called the National Digital Commission, and it's the main governing body.
Okay, so who's on this commission?
Get this. The Prime Minister himself is the chair.
Wow, okay. So they're not messing around. It's not just some low-level committee.
Not at all. It's a high-powered group. All the provincial chief ministers, heads of key institutions like the State Bank, the National Database Authority, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Board of Revenue, basically all the big decision makers in government and finance.
So all the bigwigs are at the table. What does that tell us?
It shows they're serious, there's strong political will at the highest levels of government, and hopefully it means things will get done. All those challenges we talked about, reaching everyone, overcoming those hurdles, dealing with people who resist change, having everyone on board from the start is crucial.
And it sends a strong message to investors, right? Like, hey, we're serious about this. Come join us.
Exactly. It builds confidence, attracts resources, and brings in the expertise they need to make this digital nation vision a reality.
Now, the source mentions that this approach, this high-level centralized approach, they got the idea from other successful digital nations, right?
Yeah, they cite an OECD study that looked at countries like South Korea, Singapore, Estonia, those digital rock stars.
Right.
And those countries often have this kind of central body in charge of digital stuff. They set national goals, coordinate everything, drive the agenda.
So Pakistan's not just experimenting here. They're following a model that's proven to work.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the vision, the plan, the leadership. But how do they actually roll this out? What does the implementation look like?
Well, it sounds like it'll be a team effort led by the Ministry of Information Technology and Telecommunication. They're also setting up this new entity called the Pakistan Digital Authority to oversee everything.
So a collaborative approach.
Yeah.
But what about the nitty-gritty details? Timelines, budgets, which areas they're prioritizing? Any info on that?
The source emphasizes a phased approach, which makes sense given how big this is. They'll roll things out gradually, starting with areas where they can get quick wins and build momentum.
Okay, so a step-by-step approach.
Right, and they're really stressing continuous review and adaptation. Technology changes so fast, they need to be able to adjust along the way.
Yeah, that's smart.
And they also talk about public participation and feedback. They want to make sure what they're doing actually meets people's needs.
That's a good sign. It's not just a top-down approach. They're bringing citizens into the conversation.
Exactly.
This all sounds like a massive undertaking. Lots of moving parts, lots of potential challenges. What do you think are the biggest hurdles they'll face in making this digital nation a reality?
Well, besides the infrastructure and digital literacy stuff we talked about, there's this big question of, besides the infrastructure and digital literacy stuff we talked about, there's this big question of sustainability.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, building this whole digital nation is one thing, but how do they keep it going, especially with technology changing so fast?
Right. What's cutting edge today is outdated tomorrow, it seems like. Pakistan needs to keep investing, not just in infrastructure, but in R&D, research and development. They've got to be able to adapt, learn new things, and adjust their strategies to stay ahead.
It's like they need to build a culture of innovation, right? Not just rely on technology from other places, but encourage their own people to come up with solutions.
Absolutely. They've got to cultivate a tech ecosystem in Pakistan, support startups, invest in their research institutions, and develop education programs so the next generation has the skills they need for this new economy. Create a self-sustaining cycle of innovation.
I like it. Okay, so sustainability is not just about money and infrastructure. It's about creating the right environment. Now, you mentioned cybersecurity earlier, and that's something I wanted to come back to. As things become more digital, they become more vulnerable. What's Pakistan doing to deal with those cyber threats?
Well, the source material doesn't lay out the whole cybersecurity strategy,
Okay.
but it does say it's a top priority. They talk about establishing strong cybersecurity frameworks, putting money into threat detection systems, and educating people about safety online. It's complicated, and they'll need to work with other countries and cybersecurity experts to stay ahead of the game.
It's like a never-ending race.
Yeah.
Right? You build up your defenses, and then the attackers find new ways in.
Exactly. It's not just about building walls. They need the systems and expertise to detect attacks, respond quickly, and recover. And that takes constant investment, training, and collaboration.
And let's not forget about the human factor. People are often the weakest link.
Absolutely. They need to teach people how to be responsible online. How to spot phishing scams, how to protect their data.
Okay, we've talked about the potential good things that can come from all this. But let's think about the other side for a minute. What could go wrong? What are some unintended consequences we should be aware of?
That's a good point. One concern is that this focus on technology could overshadow other important things, like fighting poverty, better education, strengthening democracy. Technology is a tool, but it's not a magic solution. It has to be part of a bigger plan for the country to develop.
So making sure everyone benefits, not just the people who are already good with technology.
Right. And there's also the risk that going digital could actually make inequality worse. If access to technology and digital skills aren't spread evenly, the gap between the haves and have-nots could widen.
So they need to make sure no one gets left behind.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of government overreach. The more data they collect, the more potential there is for that data to be misused or abused.
That's a scary thought.
It is. They have to have strong laws, independent oversight, and really strong data protection. People need to know how their information is being used and what they can do if they think their rights have been violated.
Transparency and accountability are key.
Exactly.
So it's not just about the technology itself, but about all the ethical, social, and political stuff that comes with it. It sounds like Pakistan has a lot to think about to make sure this benefits everyone.
It does. It's complicated, there's no doubt about it, but there's a lot of potential upside. If Pakistan can overcome these challenges, they could become a model for other developing countries that want to use technology for good.
Okay, we've covered a lot. We've talked about Pakistan's vision, their strategies, the possible good stuff, and the potential downsides. What's the most important thing our listeners should take away from this?
I think it's important to remember that this is a story that's still being written. It's too soon to say if they'll achieve everything that they've set out to do, but what's clear is their ambition, their commitment, and the fact that this could have a real impact. It's something worth paying attention to, not just for people who are interested in technology, but for anyone who cares about how countries can use innovation to make things better.
And that's a great point. This is an ongoing story, and we'll be here to keep you updated as it unfolds. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Pakistan's digital leap. We'll be back soon with another interesting topic. Until then, keep exploring.
Well, besides the infrastructure and digital literacy stuff we talked about, there's the question of sustainability. Tech changes so fast.
Right. What's new today is old news tomorrow.
Yeah.
So how do they keep this digital nation thing going?
Well, they have to keep investing, not just in the infrastructure, but in research and development too.
So they can't just buy the latest gadgets. They have to be able to create their own solutions.
Exactly. They need to build a whole ecosystem for tech in Pakistan.
What would that look like?
Supporting startups, investing in research, universities and labs, and education is huge.
Right. So the next generation's ready for this digital world.
Exactly. It's about making innovation self-sustaining.
Okay, that makes sense. You mentioned cybersecurity earlier. We can't just gloss over that.
Right. With all this digital stuff comes vulnerability.
So what's the plan to deal with cyber attacks and all that?
The speech doesn't get into all the specifics of their cybersecurity strategy,
Okay.
but they do say it's a top priority. They're talking about strong cybersecurity frameworks, investing in threat detection, and educating people about online safety. It's a big challenge, though, keeping up with the bad guys.
And they're probably going to need help from other countries, right?
Oh, absolutely. They'll need to collaborate with experts and partners to stay ahead of the game.
It's a constant battle, isn't it?
It is. It's not just about building walls. It's about having the right systems and people in place, being able to detect attacks, respond quickly, and bounce back. That takes investment, training, all of that.
And it's not just about the technology.
No.
We have to remember the human factor.
Oh, absolutely. People are often the weakest link.
Right.
So educating people about online safety is crucial. How to spot those phishing scams, how to protect their data.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential upside, but
Yeah.
what could go wrong?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, focusing so much on technology could mean they neglect other important things,
Like what?
like poverty, education, making sure the government works for everyone. Technology's a tool, but it's not a solution for everything.
Right. It's got to be part of a bigger plan.
Exactly. And there's the risk that going digital could actually make inequality worse.
Oh, so?
Well, if everyone doesn't have equal access to technology and digital skills, the gap between the rich and poor could get even bigger.
That makes sense.
And then there's the concern about the government having too much power.
Oh, right. With all that data they're collecting.
Exactly. It could be misused. They need strong laws, independent oversight, and solid data protection to make sure that doesn't happen.
So people need to know how their data is being used and have a way to fight back if they think something's wrong.
Exactly. Transparency and accountability.
So it's complicated. Lots of potential benefits, but also risks.
Yeah. There's no easy answer. But if they can pull it off, they could really be an example for other countries, show them how to use technology to make things better for everyone.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. What's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing is that this is just the beginning. Pakistan's digital journey is just getting started. It's too early to know for sure if they'll succeed, but their ambition and commitment are inspiring. This is a story worth following, not just for techies, but for anyone who cares about how we can use innovation to build a better future.
Well said. It's a story that's still unfolding, and we'll be here to keep you updated every step of the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Pakistan's digital leap. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring.